Garages everywhere. Mechanics meet, FARKLEs are wrenched, rides are planned, stories are told, and dreams are hatched. This is our garage. Welcome to FARKLE Garage. I'm Kim Rock. On today's show, we meet a young millennial nuddlehead. Clive wears some strange lids. We examine EnduroCross, and the guy who wrote the book on motorcycle therapy drops by for a group session. All this and more on this episode of FARKLE Garage.
This episode of FARKLE Garage begins on 3 wheels, the sidecar. Save your seat, come on along.
They come in all shapes and sizes. These bikes built for 2.
02 Yamaha V-Star 1100.
Or 3.
2016 Ural Gira.
K9s too.
1945 Harley Knucklehead.
1984 Harley Davidson FLH.
But are these bulbous buggies fun to drive? Oh, Daisy. We gathered at Langford's Western Speedway to find out.
I love it. It's a cherry on top of life.
Most fun on 3 wheels.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I love it.
Once you get the hang of it, they're just addicting.
Sidecarists say we drive them as opposed to ride.
It's not a trike.
Their dynamics are poles apart from those of a motorcycle.
It's a bit of a trick.
It's different. You gotta be spot on.
Steering demands more muscle.
It's like driving a big lawn tractor until that wheel comes up.
Turn into the sidecar and it wants to lift. Flying the chair, as it's called, is exciting if you do it on purpose.
You kind of just gotta feel it.
But don't try this stunt on the road. Proper setup, training, and common sense are important to driving sidecars safely.
Whatever the sign says, if you go the speed limit, you're going to be fine.
The earliest sidecars appeared in France in 1893. The first patents were given to an English inventor in 1903. The poor man's family car, the combo, as they were called, are seldom seen in North America.
It's one of one. They only made one like this.
Tom's rare 84 was built by Harley for the Shriners Club.
F is sidecar only.
Before he got it, Andy's knucklehead spent nearly 50 years in a basement.
They only made 131 F-Series knuckleheads in 1945. So just to be around this is a miracle.
And her name?
It's Goldie.
Barry's owned a couple of Urals. Since then, he's added an aftermarket cozy car to this Yamaha, the Rocket.
Everyone calls it the Bullet.
Manufactured in India. My 1968 Changjiang was built in China. Today, they are made to order from new old stock parts. Want a new vintage 50s rig? No problem. And Kevin? He turned his 2016 Ural into a business.
I like Victoria, I like people, and I love motorcycles, so it was a perfect fit.
This Russian bike is one of the few full-time combos.
It's not very fast, but we can go anywhere.
With a pull of the lever, she becomes a 2-wheel drive. Kevin says the ride sells itself.
When you stop, crowds gather, and can we sit in it? Can we get pictures?
So what is it about the sidecar?
They don't handle. It's not the handle. It's just the fun factor. Taking somebody with you. Everybody wants to go for a ride. Talking to your passenger.
Yeah, well, you're part of the trip. You're part of the tour. You can smell things, you can feel the air, the wind, the sounds.
And this comfy chair's a great place to introduce motorcycles to non-riders.
Crowd favorite. It's the old station wagon. You can actually use it to, go to Home Depot.
In fact, the Chang carries a studio full of camera gear, tripods, even a drone.
Anytime you're riding, it's fun, no matter what. It's just freedom. 3 wheels, 2 wheels, it's all good.
But then, if you ride or drive, you already knew that.
When we're not riding, renting, or planning projects, most of us are drooling over other people's rides. The FARKLE gang visited a couple of popular island motorcycle shows over the summer.
Hey, our friend Andy Jones put on his annual vintage motorcycle show at Western Speedway.
That was fabulous. That's where I got the Chang.
The amount of different machines from all different walks of life there, you know, is really a pleasure to attend that one.
Stunning bike showed up. Wow.
Honestly, it's Of course there's motorcycles, but it's the people, because without people, nobody would have invented the motorcycle. So really, it's about the people getting together, seeing friends you haven't seen, gaining new friends. You meet people through the motorcycle community. It's just excellent.
Those shows just fascinate me every time.
Yeah.
I learn something every time I go.
And then all these young guys who are out here drooling at the bikes, and then you know that they're going to buy some of these. And
Inspiration, right?
Inspiration, yeah.
And then there was the other show, Trevor Franklin's
Japanese Vintage Moto Meet in the fall. It was awesome.
Somebody we knew showed up with a motorcycle. I kind of stole the show, actually.
I love it when Steve shows up. I love seeing what he's going to bring to the next show. It's like a squirrel. He's got them hidden everywhere, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, check this out. And I'm like, never seen it before. But the CBX stole the show, definitely stole the show. When you started that bad boy up.
That's the beauty about those shows, because you got people are looking at bikes there and they're going, I had one of those when I was 15 or 16, and you know, that brings back memories, and then other people have never seen them, so it's pretty cool thing to do. Yeah.
It is. We're all cool when we ride the vintage bikes.
Old school cool.
Old school cool. Well, heavy emphasis on the old.
The old vintage bike thing, though, is really gathering steam now. A lot of people restoring machines, and I think you've got a truckload of vintage bikes.
No, my wife might be watching.
Oh, sorry, Clive.
Coming up, we travel to Nanaimo for some outdoor EnduroCross racing, a mashup of Supercross, Trials, and Enduro. And we visit Bev's barn. He's got a sidecar too, but this one's bulletproof. We'll be right back.
I call it taking yourself to the ugly place. It's a lot of work and really tough on the body. It's like torturing yourself. You want to give up, bar to bar, battling. Pushing your own limits. I think that's what's bringing people back.
EnduroCross. This hybrid competition, a mix of enduro, supercross, and trials.
Tough obstacles, and you just race head-to-head in multiple laps.
This relatively new sport has ridden hard here at Nanaimo's Wastelands Motocross Park for the past 3 years. EnduroCross is faster than trials, but slower than supercross. The sport began in Europe in 2000 and migrated to the US, where the American Motorcycle Association sanctioned the sport in 2007. The sport is gaining momentum with pro races across the US and a Red Bull-sponsored urban EnduroCross competition held regularly in Calgary, Alberta. Races are usually held at indoor stadiums or arenas with enduro obstacles trucked in. The outdoor course in Nanaimo hosts riders from novice to pro class, with support from the Nanaimo Motocross Association and the Vancouver Island Dirt Riding Association.
The only way to do it is volunteers.
Fortunately, like many motorcycle sports, EnduroCross is a family affair.
Especially on Vancouver Island, we have a great scene. I have 2 daughters that ride, my wife rides, one of them now is racing with me. It's great.
At 40, Al's winning races, but it's tough.
Just doing 7 laps. Just the whole thing, the rock garden, the log matrix.
But he loves the life.
You get a sense of personal satisfaction after the day's done. Just love it.
No matter what you ride.
250F, 350F, two-stroke, any bike will do. As long as you got the heart to get through the course, it'll work. It's super satisfying to finish one of these races.
EnduroCross, a new way to ride off-road.
Did you know that the first protective helmet dates back to around 1700 BC? Ah, those were the days. And yes, those are boar's tusks. In 1680, Scottish knights had a rear entry jousting helmet. Remember that, it's important. By the 1920s, leather helmets were shared by pilots and motorcycle riders alike, and the first helmet communication systems appeared. Can you hear me now? The 50s saw linen and shellac helmets. like this one worn by Bob Weston in the 1953 Isle of Man TT, where he raced a 350 Rudge at over 100 miles an hour. In 1971, Bell introduced the first full-faced helmet, the Bell Star. Since then, materials and comfort features have evolved, but not much has changed. Communications manufacturer Sena recently released the Cavalry helmet. It uses a combination of downward-firing speakers and bone conduction technology. Finally, a cruiser-style helmet with built-in comms that's smartphone compatible without an egg on the side. Can you hear me now, Steve?
Loud and clear. We'll see you back in the garage in a couple of minutes.
Yes, even our own Luddite Steve, whose VCR is still flashing 12 o'clock, can run it. Steve, you set that up?
Yeah, it took me about 10 minutes.
Can you hear it like when you're riding?
Crystal clear.
Oh, isn't that something? The helmet will communicate with most other comm systems out there. Sena is also working on a full-face helmet with noise-cancelling technology. In 2016, our new Aussie mates Mark Bryant and Johnny Vozzo developed the VozTech helmet. This was originally designed for skydiving. To create their new helmet, VozTech purchased 4 helmet patents that never saw production. They've reintroduced the rear entry style helmet, a little like Scottish knights rocked in 1680. The team at VozTech says it's not uncommon for conventional helmets to come off in a severe accident, and that injuries can also be caused by the helmet itself, snagging on the road. There's no chin strap, and you can put it on without removing your glasses. You have excellent peripheral vision. I've noticed this helmet is very quiet. Likely due to the rolled undersides, and the smooth edges don't catch in your jacket when you shoulder check. Most importantly, in the event of a crash, the first responders can scan this QR code for instructions on how to remove the helmet without moving your neck. Unfortunately, Mark gave his product the ultimate test. He crashed his bike and broke bones in 25 places, including 7 ribs and 5 spinal fractures, but his head and neck were fine. I'm guessing we're going to see more helmets like this produced in the near future.
Your collection is so eclectic.
It's nice to have a variety of things.
British military motorcycle, so that must be a brawly holder, eh?
It is now, Steve, but but during the war, it was for a Bren gun mount.
Ah.
The motorcycle came out of Egypt, and it was imported to North America, probably in the 70s.
So this bike would have seen service then, Bevan?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a real one?
Yes, it's a real thing.
They built 126,000 of this 500cc model, and they say it was the largest production of British military motorcycles ever made. They must have been all over the world.
I had a friend that rode them in North Africa. I knew another fellow that rode them in the Philippines, and I know quite a few fellows that rode them and trained on them in England. After the war, when the British took over, they ended up selling these bikes off to civilians, and they used them as taxis.
Would they have had this nice bucket seat in there?
Oh yeah, this is a Canadian model sidecar.
Okay.
Definitely.
So Bren gun.
Bren gun.
Some ammunition strap.
I think so, yes.
Ammunition cans, little foot loops there.
Right.
Whatever spares in here.
And all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And more here. A lot of room, a lot of carrying space, plus the original bags, which is nice.
Left-hand sidecar, Bev.
That's quite amazing. I've been looking at this bike for the last half hour.
Yeah.
And I never twigged.
No.
Of course, the car's on this side.
It can be a little unnerving when you pass somebody they're sitting in the sidecar and they're oncoming
when you pull out to pass.
You feel those cars are getting awful close.
Awful close, yes.
So it would motor along pretty good.
Maybe 75 flat out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be quite a thrill doing 75 miles an hour on this machine.
It would.
How'd you get this bike, Bev?
I traded 3 motorcycles for it.
Oh, yeah?
A BSS, small BSA, a Lambretta scooter,
right.
a Francis Barnett autocycle. We were both happy. And he was just finding it just taking up too much space in he was having to build another shed. So
he found 3 motorcycles was smaller than this, eh?
Smaller than this. You're exactly right.
He's not a hoarder. This is all inventory. Inventory.
Right. You know? Basically, it's a great thing to lean on anyway.
Yeah, it's always a fabulous motorcycle. It really is.
It is a neat old bike.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I just can't wait any longer. I just have to have a seat.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
The suspension barely moved. Is there any on this bike? Oh, sorry.
Okay. I think
one more time.
There we go. His jolly jumper.
Where's the Bren gun when I need it, eh? And it's very comfy.
One more time.
Our next guest has traveled to over 30 countries, and he says he's managed to do at least one outrageously stupid thing in every one. Earlier in the week, rider, writer, and adventurer Jeremy Croker popped by the garage. Have a look.
Bought that adventure bike and the dream of the big ride. Then life got in the way. Late to meet Jeremy and Elle, people that really did it, and they're going to tell us how.
I started my adventure motorcycling career, if you want to call it that, by just jumping on a bike in Alberta. I went with another guy. We didn't have much of a plan and not much money. We just knew we wanted to get out of Canada for a little while. So we went south and ended up in Panama.
Elle?
My first travels on my bike into Mexico was on a Shadow 750, and the same kind of thing. Not a lot of planning, not a lot of thought ahead of what we were doing. Made it to Guadalajara and back. Then finally in 2013, bought a BMW and made it all the way to Panama. Used Jeremy's book as a way to help convince the person I was traveling with to make the trip with me.
Oh, so you guys were doing those trips together?
In fact, I did my first trip in 2003, and that was before I ever met Elle. And I did another one where I shipped my motorcycle from Alberta to Germany, and then from there I went through the Middle East and North Africa.
Wow. Obviously multilingual. You speak 5-6 languages?
Yeah, you think so. I learned Spanish on the road. Stopped in Guatemala for 2 weeks of language studies, but you know that was already having traveled through Mexico and whatnot. So when I am on the road, I do pick up a little of the language, but I wouldn't even say that I speak English particularly well.
How did you guys meet? Like you were traveling separately in the beginning.
Met at a motorcycle rally, and then years later reconnected. And we're still not traveling together per se, not that much. We've gone through BC and things like this.
Yeah.
We haven't done a big trip yet, but
we're both working to try to save money to travel somewhere.
Yeah.
The expense of these trips must be huge.
My trip to Panama and back was 4 months, and it cost me $4,000. And when I was in...
$4,000? A month?
No, $4,000 total.
Only?
And that includes scuba diving and language studies and things like this.
Really?
It means you don't always, have the nicest accommodations.
I would agree. I took 6 months to travel from Canada down to Panama and back, and it was about $1,000 a month.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, this is counting fuel and everything.
Yeah. For me, I think the hardest part is actually leaving.
Quitting your job, if you have a job you can quit, or getting the vacation time.
Giving away possessions, whatever it takes to actually hit the road. That's the hardest part.
When I went to the Middle East and North Africa, it cost me $12,000, which is a lot of money, but I was gone for 8 months.
Is that shipping your bike and everything included?
Yeah.
I had no idea that you could do it eventually.
There are some nights of sleeping on the beach for free. And there's some eating at the Tapas on the side of the road instead of at fancy restaurants. There is some ways to make it cheaper.
Yeah, so it makes it better too. Fear. The fear of going down.
It's scary and it's not. It was scary for me, and I traveled with one friend. We left Canada together. We separated once we were down in Central America, and that was a goal of mine, to do some traveling on my own, to really feel the difference. And once I actually separated from them and drove down the highway, it wasn't any different.
Of course, you have to say, yes, sometimes bad things do happen to good people and people can get into trouble, but the risk is often overstated and the reward is often not appreciated as it should.
Did you feel safe?
Yeah, there were no worries that I had on my own. I mean, I don't go into dangerous places on purpose. I'm not walking into bars. I'm not buying drugs from anybody. I'm not trying to do anything illegal.
Jeremy, riding through the Middle East, I'd be scared.
Like, I love the Middle East. The culture is amazing. The people are interesting and fun.
You went to Beirut, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I was only in Lebanon because I couldn't get my paperwork for Iran. So I was not planning to go into Syria, to Lebanon, but I did, and I found that was actually a very enjoyable part of the journey as well.
Mechanical ability must be important.
Yeah, you'd think so. Watching me work on a motorcycle is like watching a Charlie Chaplin film. I'm all thumbs. I can bang my head while working on a motorcycle, which is very difficult to do, actually.
Do you wrench yourself out?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I've done oil change and chain. That's so far all I've done.
Yeah, two important things for a long trip, yeah.
How does it change you?
I think I have a bigger perspective on life and what's important to me now.
The more I experience other cultures and the way that I see other people, it makes me rethink, what I've been taught in my own society, and I think it makes me more understanding towards different perspectives. And I think if we all travel a little bit more and saw things from another vantage point, we might be more understanding of different cultures and different philosophies or political ideas and things like this. And I think I'll get along a little bit better.
So there you go. You can do it. It doesn't cost too much. It's not that fearful. And you don't have to be a mechanic either. Thanks for joining us in the garage, Jeremy and Al. It's a real pleasure having you guys.
Before we go, come check out this young millennial builder who's turning old metal into moving art. Right after the break.
Only living for a moment to shine.
I was riding since I was 16 or so. Always been on two wheels. The fascination with actually building them only took hold in the last couple of years.
Some say millennials are entitled lazy youngsters who thrive on participation trophies. Jay Donovan smashes that mold in this self-build shop in Central Saanich, BC. Yes, he follows his passion. At 24, he's an accomplished bike builder.
This was number 2, actually.
Lazy. His first bike, this Harley Sportster. He got more ambitious with this 42-year-old Yamaha XS 650.
It's got a little bit of time on me, but I brought some new life to it.
New life? He brought sexy back. The old bike is stripped to the bones and his vision takes shape.
Most of the frame was stock, apart from the rear subframe structure.
He beefed up the swing arm to support a new Ducati monoshock.
The wire form itself is a really nice approach for designing the bodywork.
This frame, the template for new skin, shaped by hammer and English wheel.
Smoothing out those walnuts, as it were, flatten it out, start stretching the metal and getting it towards the shape you're after.
That shape, an aggressive but elegant manta ray on wheels. But before the manta could fly, he needed to finish fast. You see, this entitled youngster had reached out to renowned motorcycle photographer Michael Lichter via social media, of course. Impressed, Michael made room for him at his invite-only bike show in Sturgis, South Dakota.
Old Iron Young Blood was Michael Lichter's premise for his motorcycles as art display.
Pounding her into shape meant working night and day. Michael admitted he was a bit nervous about inviting 50 young artists to his Sturgis show.
Showcasing up-and-coming builders and the millennial generation.
All under the age of 36. But Michael says that once he started working on the project, any reservations he had disappeared. The metamorphosis took Jay just 2.5 months. But could he get it to the show on time?
Naturally, it was on the last ferry that day. The last day I could leave, loaded the bike up, put it on the trailer without even looking at it.
He and his stepdad drove non-stop for 26 hours to get there. So focused, he forgot to bring camping gear.
I ended up sleeping in the bike trailer for the 2 weeks I was down there, and it was just exactly how it should have been.
The show was a hit. Jay and the Manta got their gold star. Jay attributes his success to his helicopter parents, his greatest mentors.
Instilling traits throughout my childhood that would be useful to me later on in this craft.
Has it been easy?
Certainly a lot of struggle and a full scrap bin, but once I had the acquired skills, it's really about just putting the time in and deriving your own methods and styles. The motorcycle industry needs an influx of people and interest, and I would love to be able to contribute to that by building the customs and getting some excitement around motorcycling for especially my generation.
Young blood. Jay says we shape our dreams by first wiping the sleep from our eyes and then pound them into reality.
Looking back at this point, it's been amazing.
With the same youthful excitement, energy, and passion of every generation.
We hope you enjoyed hanging out with us at FARKLE Garage. Have you got a story or know someone who does? Send us an email. Share it with us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and we'll share it with the world. And if you want to see more FARKLE Garage, watch us on YouTube. Before we go, remember, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy a motorcycle, and that's pretty close. Later, bikers!
Strap on my brothers, boots are on the ground. Crack the throttle, hear that rumbling playing in my head.
Riding gear provided by Clive. Technical riding gear.
Robbers on the road, wind in my face, riding down the highway. Heaven is a place I'm rolling on. Rolling down the highway, thunder is my song.